Welcome to Mary for the Ages podcast. I'm your host, Mary, and I am so very glad that you are here. This podcast season is all about people who have walked through process with God, who have not arrived because that is not a thing, but led to incredible fruit in their lives. Process is not about arriving. Process is about who you do it with. And so all of the people on this season have done a process with God, and that changes everything. Buckle up and enjoy. I'm here with my friend, Michelle Calvert. She lives up in St. Louis, and I know what you do, Michelle, but what is it that you currently are doing in life?
Hey, Mary, thanks for having me. So what I'm currently doing is I am a substance use counselor, and right now it is for women and pregnant women, postpartum women who are in active use or they are in recovery and have some history of substance use.
Wow, that's crazy. And I'm sure we'll kind of get into how you landed in that job and everything. For now, do you remember how we met?
I do remember how
How
we
did we
met.
meet?
I met you at a School of the Prophets down in Franklin, Tennessee, with Justin Allen. We had lunch. I remember you. You're a very rememberable person. And I was sitting next to you, and I just remember I was like, man, this girl is unique.
Yeah, that's probably a true story. Yeah. It's on brand. It's very on brand.
Yeah.
I remember sitting next to Michelle. We were down at the Franklin Mercantile having a sandwich. There were just a ton of people jammed around this table, and it's like you get a bunch of prophetic people together in a room, and they're just gonna talk. But one thing I noticed about you was that you weren't really talking a lot. And you were next to me, and I was like, I just feel like there's more to the story. And then I was starting to get nosy, and I was like, I feel like she's got a real cool story with some depth. And I was kind of like, wonder about Michelle. And I'm like, let's all trade Instagrams and stuff. So we all traded Instagrams, and we've just really gotten to connect online and on the phone in the last year. And it's just very clear that Michelle carries a powerful grace from the Lord, and that she carries a really powerful story, and that her testimony is so hard-hitting. It just really carries a gravitas to it and a weight that's really, really beautiful. So when I started this podcast, Michelle popped into mind, and I was like, hey girl, and she's like, I've been wanting to do a podcast. And I was like, let's do it. Then I finally get to hear snippets of the story that I have been convinced was in there, and the rest is history.
Yes.
So I've been asking everybody that comes on the podcast, whether or not you do or don't have an answer, do you see in the Spirit? How do you see in the Spirit? What was the first time that you saw in the Spirit? And so any of those kind of questions that jump out at you, feel free to just run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, this topic, it's my favorite. It's my favorite. And I'm so happy that we get to talk about it. So, yes, I believe I do see in the Spirit.
What does that even mean?
I see things that other people don't see, but I don't have a mental health.
I've been joking. It's just I've been writing a lot more about seer experiences on the internet, and there's a certain hurdle you have to get on to go on the internet and be like, it's not what I see, but I see dead people,
See people. Listen, I actually do substance use assessments, and one of the questions is, do you see things or hear things that people don't see or hear?
Oh, I had to work through this myself, because seeing things that other people don't see is considered a sign of crisis. Mm-hmm. But it excludes things that are seen within a religious and spiritual context in a mental health field. Would you say, Michelle, that you see things other people don't see in a religious and spiritual context?
Yeah. In a religious and spiritual context, and in here. Yes, I do see. So if I had to give a different answer, yes. So I do see in the spirit. And what that means is that I actually just see in a realm what that is very real, that is biblical. And I see things that I feel like are just deeper rooted on what's really going on in the natural. And I think it's a privilege. And early on, I would say it was a curse, but it's not.
Say more.
I think the first time I saw in the spirit was when I was 3. Which I didn't, you know what's so crazy is that I didn't even know that this is what it was. I just thought this was normal. And even as when we start talking more into my adulthood and things, I'm like, y'all don't see that? Nobody's like, you know what I mean? You're just like, and so then I go through a season often that's like, I think I'm crazy. You're questioning yourself. So, disclaimer.
I'm crazy or y'all are real crazy.
Disclaimer, if you are watching this, you're not. Okay? And we're going to support you and you're going to feel very validated after this podcast. You're not. But the very first time that I saw in the spirit, actually preparing for this podcast, I was writing down just history with God, kind of where did it start, until you sit down and write those things. And I was 3 and I had grown up in a very, very hectic, there was a lot of violence around me. There was a lot of physical violence, abuse, things like that. And I was in my room. I was 3. I was in my room and I was playing with toys and I hear yelling in the other room, which was very common. So this was something that I could actually tune out at a point where if I stay in my room and I mind my business, nothing happens to me. But this certain time, I was reminded it was getting pretty bad. And all of a sudden, this man walks into my room and closes the door and comes and kneels down and starts playing with me, like with my toys. And all I know is that there was such a bright light. Like, if I could say, it was like a white noise and it shunned out the noise that was out in the hallway. And that, I believe, was the first time that I saw in the spirit, and it was Jesus. And that was cool.
That's the kind you want, Michelle and I were chatting on the phone before this podcast, and she was like, man, I don't know if I should share that story. And I was like, yes, please. I feel such an interest even in the timeline because the first time I ever saw in the spirit, I was also 3. I was in my backyard in North Georgia playing in the grass, and this man in a robe walks up to me, kneels down, and he's like, hey, like, can I play with you? Like, play in the grass with you? And, I just really liked his vibe. And so I said yes. That's been pretty much the resting phase ever since, But that experience opened my eyes in the spiritual realm. And then from that point on, I saw spiritually. And I mean, I don't know, we didn't talk about this, but like maybe was that your experience too, that this experience with Jesus actually was a marker where there was a shift into that realm?
I would have to say so. I didn't get very many of those because probably about 6 months, maybe a year later, there would be some abuse that would happen. That would be, now there's perversion that's entered. And so I do believe that was the shift that I was able to see. And it was so beautiful. The first time I got to see was him. But it did turn where, I saw and I saw things that just were scary, I would have to say, for a 4-year-old. And just even, you look back and you're just like, my gosh, we're just out here. Like, things are just like, I'm just seeing things just walk by. And it got to a point, honestly, Mary, where it became so normal that it became more real sometimes than the reality that I was in. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it's like the spiritual and the physical realm start bleeding together because people see it as very separate, right? People like it when things are separated because, well, this is spiritual and this is physical. Like, I can trash my body and have these amazing spiritual experiences and be more spiritual, or I can, like, only live in the physical realm, and that means that I don't have to think about what's going on in the spiritual realm around me. And in fact, neither are true.
Yeah.
And so the reality is there can be an imbalance, but there's also a lived reality that people that see spiritually live in. That is, these two realms live together.
Yeah.
And we're just living aware of that in a profound way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I would totally agree with that. So yeah, that's whenever I first started seeing, and it became a very common thing. But us putting language to it now, it just wasn't language then. It just wasn't.
Well, and in some ways it's not supposed to be because people that are not seers want an explanation. And they're like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And why are you seeing this and I'm not? And I want to see this and I'm not seeing it. First off, when somebody tells me that, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you looking for, sweet pea? And people are like, I'm going to go get on some drugs and like see what I can see. And I'm just like,
Till we get to that part, because
let's just go there. Okay, so let's back up. You're seeing spiritually as a child, and then you start to see darker things that have gained access through perhaps other people's decisions.
Yep.
Which I think is a very common seer experience. You have these things that have kind of gained access, and it's all happening. And then there's no language. But what would you say? Are you glad that you can see now looking back?
Yes, I am glad. Once again, there's a lot of maturity that has came with that. I want to make, and I'm not saying that I am the most mature person. What I'm saying is I'm more so saying maturity with God, because there was a time in my life where I knew I was a seer and I would go and gain access in illegal ways and use it and I wouldn't even say that I thought I was using it in a good way. And Jesus was not the access point. And I had a lot of things that I had opened up, and I can share that if you.
Yeah, well, for those listening, I have a grid for what legal and illegal access might be. But for starters, like, what is legal? What's illegal? Who made the laws of legal and illegal? Where does that even come from? I have so many questions that I think would be helpful. But the other thing that I'm thinking too, Michelle, is like, what is the difference? And this might be the most important thing. What's the difference for using Christ as the access point in the door and using, like, let's say, like a hallucinogenic or, something else?
Sure. Those are really good questions. And I am just going to share some examples. Would that be some examples of what illegal looked like in my life, what legal looked like? And from my understanding and what I wholeheartedly believe in is that legal is through Jesus. That's it. There's nothing more, nothing less. I get even if you can hear my tone, it changed. That's it. Illegal is anything else.
Okay, but how did you come to that conclusion? Because I've even met people that say that they follow Jesus and they also use drugs as a gateway to the spiritual realm. So how did you come to the conclusion, right, that like Jesus is legal?
Okay, so the Bible. But I have some lived experience, so let's go with that. Yes, the Bible. But for me, I have a history with drug use. So I was addicted to it. I did drugs. I think the first drug I actually did was ecstasy at 18. It was the most, I'm going to just say it, exhilarating, but scary experience I've ever had. And you would think that that would make you stop, especially as a seer. And it actually opened access to some things that I was not prepared for. So for my example, I would say as a seer, from my experience, when I was doing drugs, I saw a lot of things that I don't believe Jesus would want me to see or even needed me to see. When I came in through Jesus, the legal way, and what that looks like for me is worship. That looks like anytime he initiates me, he initiates my heart. Anytime he initiates it, that's been the most legal that it's been for me. It could be, and what I mean by initiation, I mean, there's a lot.
I think most people that are seers, they seem to be like, there's three ways of access, right? There's like darkness, like initiates contact, which sometimes I think happens with seers, right? As probably both of our cases where darkness tries to come in and overwhelm by providing an experience that might be really overwhelming, that might fry somebody or really burn them on experiencing the spiritual realm. Or there is an actual physical gift, right, where you can toggle on and off. But then two, there's a moment where Jesus opened your eyes, or there's this question, he says it a lot in the Old Testament prophets, and it's, Son of Man, what do you see? And then that becomes actually a conversation with God where he's showing you something and he's also providing interpretation and peace and comfort along with it. I mean, would you say that's pretty consistent with your experience?
Absolutely. That's actually really, really good language to explain it, because the thing that keeps coming up to my mind is that there's this one episode that happened. You know, I think I'll probably share this, but, you know, I have 6 years delivered from addiction. So we're not believing in Jesus and doing drugs still. But there's this one event that keeps on coming up for me. Literally, it was whenever I was in active addiction. And I remember I was like crawled up into a ball in a corner just at this house. And I say this because what I saw was so real, but I saw darkness and light fighting. It was warring. Like I was literally in you remember the movie 300 where they're like, you know what I mean?
I missed a lot back in the 90s for lots of reasons, but yes.
So it's very
having a dogfight.
I mean, a really intense dogfight. At this point, I've gotten to the point where I'm just not scared anymore. I just don't even want to be here. I'm just like, whatever. If this is part of it, then this is part of it. So I guess I kind of got numb to it. But I watched it and I was like, question came up that said, I was like, man, they're really fighting. And I wonder what it's for. You know, I don't know what the fight was for. And I look over and I see this man that I remember at 3. And I look at him and he looks at me with this, that look. And I look back and I'm like, my gosh, they're fighting for me. And it really was like heaven and hell fighting for my soul.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think with God's grace and mercy, that although in my mess, I saw Jesus, he was next to me. And the way he looked at me was like, I'm here.
So, Michelle, you've really been through a lot of process with Jesus, and I think you've really seen him show up for you in a lot of pinches. And we've been talking a lot on this podcast about process and what that looks like, and doing process with Jesus and doing process with the Lord. And so I would say, What's been your experience of Jesus when you've been in the middle of a situation, TM? Because heaven and hell, having a dogfight for your soul in the spiritual realm is sort of a situation. But in the middle of it, you see Jesus. It sounds like he's pretty much been a constant for you in life, as he has been in mine, which is a common shared experience, And I think too, I'm now just rambling, but I think a lot of people think that seers are just sort of these rogue people spiritually, and they're like, well, why are you having these experiences? And when you really get around a lot of seers, what you find out is, no, actually, we have a constancy in our lives that stretches from beginning to end, and that's that we have seen the Lord, and that our sight is a part of our testimony. It's a part of our narrative. It's a part of our story. What's been your testimony and experience, Michelle? What has been your testimony of Jesus?
Yeah, so I think for me, the testimony of Jesus was August 25th, 2019. I was using very, very heavily. Like I was at the end of my rope. And one of the things that I think came along with just being in active addiction and doing drugs, I was at such a low place that I was just going to commit suicide. And so on August 25th, I was writing a letter because my daughter at the time was 2, and she had a very involved dad. And so my plan was to walk out in front of traffic and kill myself. And I was writing this letter. So whoever found my daughter, like, hey, my daughter's up there, get her to her dad's. I had reached the point where that's what I thought was the best for everyone.
You are just in chronic overwhelm. And then on top of that, you're having these spiritual experiences that nobody can provide a context for. And so there's just this crushing weight. And then you've got like the cycle of like, and this is where the spiritual and the physical really do overlap, because you've got a chemical addiction that is feeding the spiritual thing. And so there's 2 cycles that are happening at the same time. And so honestly, no wonder.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't understand the rituals that go along with it. The going to go buy it, the separating. I mean, it's very ritualistic. Let's just put that out there. And I wanted to make sure I put that in this, because I think we can get into these religious little boxes, if I can say it. And we think that, I mean, yes, there's, getting free from addiction, getting free from the spirit of suicide, getting free, like all this freedom comes along. But there's some things that I took part in that I had to go through and walk through. And so I feel like people don't talk about that a lot. And if they do, I haven't heard it.
Well, are you kind of saying that there's a ritualistic or an occult or maybe a darker entity that's moving through some of these drug practices that is basically creating a connection with you through the physical realm and through the physical decisions that you're making? And then it's like adding to a cycle of addiction and torment.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's so good. Thank you for taking that and putting a little bow on it. Wow. It doesn't sound so bad. So yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. To go back to that, so I am going to unalive myself is what I was wanting to do. And as I walk out the door, I feel this hand on my shoulder and the door's open, and I look back and I see this man that I have seen since I was 3.
That one.
Who shows up just in time, and he looks at me and he says, "Trust me." And the door closes, and I fell, I know it, in the arms of God. And I wept, and I wept, and I wept, and I didn't know how I was going to stop using drugs. I knew that there was no other way that I would ever go back.
Wow.
And we got a 6-year process, and this is what I'm doing sitting here today.
honestly, like, that's such a powerful story and that's such a powerful testimony because Jesus showing up for you in the middle of it is the story.
Yeah. And so that right there, I truly feel like was the testimony of Jesus. He came in, right? I'm at my lowest. Actually, every single time that he's ever came in has been in my mess. I haven't been, it's not when I'm pretty. It's not when I'm got everything together. When I mean, obviously now when I'm reading my Bible, but I was not reading my Bible. I was not praying. I was not going to, girl, I wasn't doing anything but rebelling. Out here just rebelling, man.
Well, and partaking in very different rituals of a very different flavor. And, you weren't, doing all the right things.
Yes. And there was a time whenever I went through a season where I'm just deep repentance. Like when you realize he doesn't have to and can just leave you and he doesn't. And like there was this season where I'm just like, I still even think about, I'm like, Lord, if there's an ounce of pride or rebellion in me, Lord, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like I just, because I can't believe and that a God
Yep. Yep.
that a God would just come in and just show you a love that you was looking for your whole entire life. And you had to do nothing for it. Everything in my life has been very transactional. Everything has been transactional. And so when he came in, it was just sweet.
It kind of marks you for life. You can't unsee it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's why I go so hard in the paint for others to get free. And I hate when people get in the way of that. Don't make it hard. Stop.
Just let him. Yeah. Just let Jesus. Oh my gosh. Well, and I just feel like there's such a powerful testimony in your life where Jesus comes even in your imperfection, but he also doesn't leave you in your imperfection, which is the case for all of us, right? So what would you say to somebody that's been kind of in your shoes, right? They've been using rituals to enter and access the spiritual realm. Maybe they're in active addiction. What would you say to them?
I would probably say you're not too far gone. There's a better way. There's a way that will actually leave you with freedom and breakthrough and all the things that you are looking for. You'll find the truth. Because that's really what it is we're just looking for the truth about ourselves, about the world. And that's why I don't get too offended with the people who want to be seeing other things through other doors. I don't get too offended. Now if you're a Christian, I have probably a different conversation than I would with somebody that isn't, but there's just so much grace. There's a lot of grace, especially for the people who grew up in church, you know what I mean? Been hurt. Then the people who represented God was people, terrible people. There's definitely a grace to it, but I would just say there's a better way and you're not too far gone and not too messy. I don't know. They feel like I have to have it all together or I have to be this, I have to be that. Oh, I do this. Really, I think that's where Jesus thrives the most. I mean, he thrives along everywhere, but in my life and my experience, I don't think that people who are accessing the spiritual realm illegally, not through Jesus, is off limits. And actually, I really believe that the Lord loves them and just wants to connect with them in that area. Because you're just seeking something.
Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like people that are accessing the spiritual realm are like seekers and they're really looking for not just answers, but also lived experience, because I think a lot of people can really sense that there is a world, like, quote unquote, beyond the veil. Jesus has ripped the veil in two, and he offers something much better. It's just reading in John 10:7, Jesus said, I tell you for certain that I am the gate for the sheep. Everyone who came before me was a thief or a robber, and the sheep did not listen to any of them. I am the gate or the door, and all who come in through me shall be saved, and then they will come and go and find pasture. And a lot of these entities, right, they've been running around basically offering something that does not provide peace or rest in the long run. And Jesus is actually saying, hey, like, through an experience with me, through knowing me, you will come in and find rest for your souls.
Yep.
There's actually, so when we talk about like Christ being the door to the spiritual realm, that means that there is a gate to go through. There is an access point. There is a door. That's not necessarily about like slaking curiosity. It's not about slaking curiosity. It's about finding rest.
Yeah.
And finding a real experience with Christ.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Once again, thanks for taking that, putting a little bow on it. Here's a gift for the people.
Pausing here to let you know that if you are enjoying this podcast, you may enjoy an upcoming course that I'm teaching on not only hearing the voice of God, but also walking in process with God. I have a master's degree in theology, and I am teaching a course that's based on how I learned to hear the voice of God, which was by reading the Old Testament prophets. And this course is not only about the mechanics of how to hear God's voice, but it's also about the process that we walk through, because we often don't share a word until we have become a word. And so if you are interested in finding out more about this, there's a couple ways you can learn when it drops. One is by going to maryfortheages.com, MARI for the ages.com. You can also visit MARI for the Ages at Substack, which you can access by clicking the blog link on maryfortheages.com. This course is about a 2-hour text-based course that invites you into process, but not just into process. It invites you into relationship with God in real time. Let's just properly contextualize this and make it make sense, because it might not make sense
to the general audience.
So Jesus came and got you out of a situation.
Yeah.
Was that the last time Jesus would show up and rescue you?
No. That's the last time he came and rescued me out of some mess. This time, the mess he would get me out of, he really actually didn't rescue me, but he walked me through it. He walked with me through it, hand in hand. So I guess we're doing this.
Well, I mean, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, because I feel like we have these mountaintop moments with God, and we expect that like our life is going to run in a particular direction, and that somehow we escape process, and that we're saved once. And perhaps that was not your experience.
No, it was not, because I was still broken. So no, that was not my experience. So whenever in 2019, had this encounter with the Lord, didn't do drugs anymore, felt okay, this is great, delivered, meaning it was not a stronghold in my life. It was something I didn't struggle with anymore. It was something I didn't crave. None of that, which is uncommon in the recovery world whenever Jesus isn't involved, cravings and all that stuff. So it would be, man, I'm running with the Lord. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's going. And 22 happened. And in 22,
I feel like 22 just kind of happened for all of us in different ways. 22, each year since 2020 has brought its own particular flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because one of the things was, although the drugs and alcohol was gone, I still had behaviors. I still was getting affirmation from adulterous relationships. There was still some behaviors, but I love the Lord, you know what I mean? And I felt like I did. I felt like I loved him. And about 6 months in, so about 6 months in from 2019, I was feeling that conviction. I was like, okay, Lord, all right, I surrender all. I got out of a 12-step program. I transitioned my accountability to the church. Now I'm like, all right, I give, all of that to you. So was running with him, found a home church. It was awesome. 2020 was the last time that I had, in that 6 months premarital sex. Let's just call it what it is, right? So 2022 comes around and I am part of this ministry. The Lord told me to lay it down, get off leadership. All of a sudden there's slander, gossip. I mean, it was a terrible season. And then I'm feeling low, and lo and behold, there's this guy who shows up, and I have sex and I get pregnant. And when I had so many times looking back, the Lord tried. He did. Tried to step in. I chose the latter anyway. And I was in a great church community. I was getting discipled. There was a lot of good things that were happening, but there was a piece of my heart that I was not allowing the Lord to come in to.
Well, and how many of us is that? Like, because, like people may be listening to this and be like, well, I'm not sleeping around. It's like, be careful for the little foxes.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
they'll get in there and spoil everything. And like, how many of us is that? Like, this little piece of my heart that I just won't quite give to him.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is that you might not be sleeping around with someone, but you're sleeping around with something that takes precedence over the Lord. And you haven't given him access to that, And for me, I don't even think it was something that I did every 2 years. It actually was a cycle. So it was something that I would do and then feel super bad about and stop. And then I would do it every 2 years. And so, but I didn't know that till after I walked through. So I found out I was pregnant and my whole world just shattered. I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I'm thinking I'm going to disappoint people. It was just a lot. And I can tell you this, I'm friends with her, but there was a prophet who had a dream about me and who was interceding for me. Because when I found out, I had partnered with fear and I didn't know if I was going to keep my son. Mind you, I'm a Christian who has had an encounter with Jesus and I love him. And yet the things from the past crept in and I partnered with fear. And so I'm telling you, there are people interceding for you that the Lord will put you on their heart because he told her everything. You know what I mean? And she was like, interceding. So just because you hear something, you don't have to go tell everybody. Just intercede.
Pray real hard.
Pray really hard. So I had partnered with darkness pretty much, and I had an appointment scheduled. I remember when I got pregnant, I don't know if I ever would have went through it, but I did partner with darkness. And I can tell you right now, I was tormented for 2 weeks straight. When I tell you screeching, bed shake, I mean, it was torment.
And like you're seeing it too. Like it's all happening.
It's all happening. It's all happening. I have partnered with darkness and I remember in my journal entry and I'm like, Lord, I want to run away, but where else will I go? So if you're going to be a part of this, if you have forsaken me, if you don't want me anymore, because remember, everything's been transactional for me. So now, because what was embedded, I have to be good to receive love. And so now I messed up. And so, Lord, if you don't want me anymore, then I understand. And in that moment, I get this vision, which the very dreams and vision is a lot of the ways the Lord speaks to me and I see.
Which is honestly like so many people's experience, right? Is dreams, visions, encounters, all these different things. Yeah. Like that all counts as seeing for those listening at home.
Yeah. And so I get this vision and I'm on this beach and I'm here and it's like right there. And I'm on my knees and I have so much shame. He is the same man that has been there,
Just keeps showing up, doesn't quit.
is holding a baby in his arms. And I know it's him. He turns to me and he says, if you trust me in this, I promise I will redeem everything you thought you've lost. And I would love to say that in that moment I trusted him. However, it did lead me to finally telling some wise counsel, the people who were in my corner. I could tell you this, that was one of the hardest things, but the best thing that I did was get some accountability, vulnerability. And it's hard because I get it. A lot of people are like, I was prepared for the pastor to take me in front of the church.
Can we talk about how many of these stories there are on TikTok right now and why that might be a real concern?
I could see, and that's why I want to be very sensitive. Like, I'm talking about, like, listen, I love the local church. I think when it's healthy, great accountability, I am very grateful for my leadership and my church. And it's as healthy, I think, as it can be. It's a healthy church. And so when I went to my pastor, and there, it's fivefold. We have different leadership, different, but they all speak. But anyway, so I went to the senior leader, his wife, and I tell them. And the very first thing that they do is they were like, well, this baby isn't a product of shame. And they prayed and prophesied.
Wow.
Over this child. So mind you, everything in me has been transactional. I have to be a good person. I have to be a good girl to receive love. And in that moment, God used them to, once again, we don't see you as, now, I will say this, they didn't affirm it, meaning like, they're like, we are going to walk you through some work to do, some healing, but it was loving. So I had that whole week, I had a meeting with them and just had to repent because they had poured into me. They're pouring into me. They're discipling me. They're walking through things. And I felt like the Lord was like, hey, you got to take some accountability. And I think that's where the maturing with Christ is so crucial. And it also, once you start healing and taking accountability, I also believe that that can be a foundation on when you start seeing from a healthy lens, right? There now, although I see in the spirit, I see things from a very healthy perspective.
Well, and everybody has their lens and their vantage point. Okay, so like everything in your life up to this point has been transactional. And in a moment, your lens just shatters.
Absolutely. And in that moment, I ended up not going through with it. I walked through some accountability. I actually took myself out of ministry just to do some inner healing and figure out what was going on. And it was so sweet though, because the Lord, and this is what I mean by him even showing up in my mistakes, like having this gift, like the biggest thing that I had to do, I think the hardest thing I had to do was go tell my 5-year-old daughter and repent to her. Because I'm the spiritual leader in her home. Oh my gosh. And in a 5-year-old way, I had to tell her, mommy had to ask God for forgiveness. And her eyes just was like, you know what I mean? I was like, but because he is so good, he still gave us a baby. And I told her about how God wants mommy and daddies to be married. In a 5-year-old way. But I can tell you this though, Mary, walking through that and having to repent to my 5-year-old daughter, I recognized the weightiness of sin. My process is I just had to go through that to see the weightiness of it because I didn't see it. I didn't. But even in that, the Lord told me in a dream, like I was having a boy. A lot of people would be like, in my head, I'm like, dang, I had a baby. I had sex out of marriage. I have a baby. I'm a single mom of 2. Like I don't have very great credentials from home. I don't look like the Christian family. And yet the Lord is so prevalent in my house and talking and speaking to me about my son. Like he named him. He was just so involved. And so I just think that was really cool. Like, even in my mess, although I didn't get rescued because I got pregnant, but he walked through it with me.
Yeah, well, one thing we've been talking about on the podcast a lot has been how God is creating and forming family. And it really sounds like God has stepped in your life as the husband and the father of your family, which upends a lot of ideas of what these things have to look like.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. People get a little squirmy whenever you talk about husband and all the things. But with Jesus, one of the things that I feel like in my life and my experience is that he really has held up to his character in my life, has shown up even in my mistakes, which is wild. It's wild. Like, and that's why I'm just so convinced he doesn't need things to be pretty. And actually, I feel like his best work is when things are shattered in my life. I just keep getting this picture, this shattered glass, and he's picking it up. And you know those old church buildings where they have that beautiful window with the art and the different colored glass? I don't know. That's just what I'm getting is I keep seeing that. And I just feel like that's what he is just wanting to people to know, is that those pieces of glass become beautiful art. And if you pick them up on your own, you'll cut yourself, you'll hurt yourself. But I honestly feel like if you just allow Jesus the door to come in, or you go in the door, that he will pick those up and make something so beautiful. Nothing I could ever do on my own.
That's who he's been for you. He's stepped into those gaps and those places for you. And I mean, day to day, what does that look like for you right now?
Whew, it's fun. I am in a season of reaping. You caught me on a great season 3 months ago. Yeah, we would have been crying the whole time. Tears are good. But what that looks like for me on a day-to-day basis is actually what he's done through me. I help others, and it comes from a place of overflow. And I feel a lot of times people, this is my thoughts, that people will go through these processes with the Lord, or go through process. They get halfway filled up. So they get a little bit of revelation. They get an inkling of a little bit of breakthrough, a little bit of, and then they try to pour that out.
And they don't wait until it's the water that doesn't run dry.
Yep. And I believe that in the season that I'm in, I know without a shadow of a doubt, there's a confidence that has came upon me that was not here even 6 months ago. And I feel it so strongly that there is no one else in this world that has that could bring me through, and that has never asked anything of me except for to pick up my cross. And that can look like different things in different seasons. And so I actually am working with women who 6 years ago was me 6 years ago. That right there is the testimony of Jesus.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And so now Jesus walks with you into those rooms where you're having the conversations that you wish you could have had with yourself however long ago.
I do believe that what it looks like, just like I said, in this season, is that it's what he's done through me and walking with him day to day. I'm just not afraid to make mistakes.
It's a redemption of a season that was so painful for you initially.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally remembering in last October, I had this thought, and I was like, I had this word transition, and I have been in a season for the past 3 years. And I was like, Lord, all right now, I know that you are with me, but can I get a break? And we're in it.
There's been a sense of calm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's beautiful to see how he's led you through this. I think a lot of people listening might be like, oh, well, that's me. I haven't made big mistakes and I haven't changed my life course and blah, blah, blah. And there's a power in your story, Michelle. And I was going to even say, For me, like after we had a conversation and I finally got kind of down into the story that I knew was there a little bit, the Lord actually used your story to really provide encouragement as He course corrected things in my own life. There are some things, even like with me being online, that the Lord was like, hey, we need to shore that up. It's listening to the small things and allowing Him to realign and redefine and bring you into a place where you're more, I don't know, where you're like willing to let Him correct you, or willing to like, have hard conversations and be like, yeah, like I didn't know this, but I was off here. So how do I like bring other people into the process? For me, like I've been, if it's His, and if my life is Jesus, then He reserves the right to realign and redefine certain things. And that's for anybody listening to this. If you're listening to this and the Lord has been pressing something on your heart to realign you in a time of process, or to bring you into a place where you are realigned and there's something pressing on your heart, listen to that. Because like Michelle's story is not about mistakes. It's about God showing up in the middle of her process. It's about God showing up in spite of the fact that there were twists and turns in the story. And you can totally see kind of the setup of stress that you were under in that season. Hungry for like relational connection. There's just always a setup, a wind up, and a pitch for that kind of season. And the Lord will step into anything as soon as He's invited. So if there's something that's been pressing, like if you're listening and there's something that's been leaning on you in this conversation, that's the season that we're all in. It's redefining, it's realigning, and sometimes it's like burning the whole house down. Sometimes it's making ashes so that there can actually be a real foundation in the house. So there's just a lot of different things that this could be for you. And it's easy to be like, well, that's somebody else's story or that's somebody else's mistake. Well, sweetie, like, I don't know why you think you're immune.
Like, okay.
But the really good news is like that, Michelle, like you have allowed Jesus to show up in your process. And right now you kind of have this non-conventional family that Jesus is the husband and the dad. Jesus is everything to you. Jesus has been these things for you. I mean, He's also like the boss at work. And if your real boss is watching, like you're still the boss, but yeah. Jesus is also the boss. There's this really beautiful picture of Jesus coming and being in the middle of everything.
Yeah, that's so good, Mary. And I want to encourage people because I do a lot of ministry stuff. And there's a lot of people who are like, oh, but I've never done this. They feel like that they don't have a testimony. And I'm like, I pray my daughter and my son has a testimony like yours. But I just want to encourage people. Yes, Jesus used the most, I'm all or nothing. Listen, I go big or go home. Okay. So He had to come in on, that's just my personality. You might be able to discern and have wisdom. Listen, it takes me to go through it to get it. And I've surrendered to that. Now I've gotten a little bit older and I don't want to go around the mountain no more. I just don't. Okay. So I want to encourage you. Oh, well, that's her testimony. He cares about everything. And just because I'm going to go a little bit of counseling for a minute. There's a big T trauma and there's a small T trauma. And it doesn't matter. And those big T traumas might be something that would be small for you and vice versa, but it happened to you. And it was it was something that made you view Jesus in a way that He never wanted you to view Him. It didn't have to be drugs. It could be, oh my gosh, divorce of parents. It could be anxiety. Like it doesn't have to be huge for Jesus to come in to be in a mess that you feel like, well, it's not hers, it's yours. And it's just as valid. It's just as important.
Well, I think you probably don't know this about me, Michelle, but when you talk about legal and illegal access at the beginning of the show, like I was so divorced. I was still having dreams and stuff, but I was so trying to shut out the spiritual realm in my teens and early 20s that I got really spiritually dry and I burned out on religion and like joined a Buddhist thing. And like I wasn't trying to have seer experiences. I didn't, but like I'm going to like this like one world religion kind of place in my early 20s and like, having all these experiences, right? And I'm just like, why am I seeing colors floating over people? This is fun and weird. I just never didn't know that until there was sort of a progression of things, and like a white orb showed up in my room one night and I was like, would you like to be a witch? And I was like, this whole thing is fishy. No. Like, I don't think anybody understands. I am trying to meditate and have inner peace, and everything in the world is talking to me like, shut up, was kind of my personal. But 2 months after that, like, I had an encounter with Jesus that flipped my world on its head. And like, in that process, right, like, I had been involved in so much, but there was like an almost like instant, like, freedom from that darkness that really came through his power in a moment, but then also just frankly obedience and a total distaste for what I'd been walking in. And I can speak New Age language. I understand that world very well. But for me, there's such a distaste for things because I found the real thing that I was looking for. We all have different stories of how we get to certain places, but he reserves the right to like step in and be like, hey, this is not for you, boo-boo.
Run.
Let's run the other way. Like,
Yeah.
let's take a step back on this.
Yeah.
And I think that your story is powerful because not because of your perfection, but because you've allowed him to be in your story. And you're somebody that actually does have a really tender heart. And I think that the Lord really likes to be around you because you're honest. And I think that he really enjoys you because you're willing to let him be him. And that brings a purity to the way that you see and to the way that you speak, where you're not trying to put something on him. And so there's a real power in your story. And there's a real power just in your willingness to say yes.
Thank you. I'm speechless. Not really. I'm never speechless. I always have stuff to say. But
well, it's the idea of speechlessness, not the practice.
yeah, you know what, Mary? I feel at this point, like I said, you caught me at a really good point in my life where there were some things that happened that in this past season, like in the winter time, that there was a lot of things I believed theologically about him that was broken off. And my prayer changed from, Lord, take me out of this season, to, Lord, just be with me. And I think that right there just has changed, where it doesn't matter if everything is on fire around me. Like, if he's just with me.
It's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough.
And that's just what I want. And now that, like, I just want people to get is like, there's this girl at work that I have helped she gave her life to the Lord. I mean, it's awesome. We've talked other things. I'm laughing because like we make it so hard. And this other coworker, she's very much so like, she loves Jesus as well. She's more so this new person who loves Jesus comes in and she's like, I got a Bible. Where should I read? I said, just read John, Girl, this other girl was like, actually read Romans, read John, and then if you want some wisdom, read Proverbs. And I'm like, chill. This girl looked so scared. She was like, I just want to read. And I share that story just to say, like, you got to read the room. I think we sometimes take here's what I've done in the past. I feel like I have to defend Jesus.
He's so good, man.
Yeah. And he meets people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And so I share that just to say we overcomplicate things. And if you just keep it simple, that you hear the truth, sets you free. Jesus is the way. And then so how I kind of go about things now is it the way? Do I feel set free? And is it the truth? All right. I have to keep it simple.
Jesus is really good at walking into rooms where he's quote unquote not supposed to be. I think about Lonnie Frisbee that was in the Jesus People movement. He met Jesus on an acid trip in Tequiquis Canyon. And that was definitely a seer experience. And the one thing that really bears the fruit is I think it's the longevity of the experience and the goodness that it produces.
That's so good, Mary. That's really good. I don't know, we were going to have a dream segment, but there was a dream that I wanted to share. I know we've already.
Go for it. Well, tell us. Yeah. So you see in the room while waking, but do you also kind of see at night? Talk to us a little bit about your dream life.
Yeah, dream life it's fun, man. I was so thankful. I'm so thankful for this podcast because I write them down, but when you put as I was preparing, I'm like, dang, I be dreaming, Lord. And so there was a season that I had to be careful with that because in my 2022, whenever I was going through ministry stuff and things like that, the dreams dream with a healthy heart. Let's just get the heart healthy. Because I'm telling you right now, you think that God is not a gossip. And people will get all these dreams. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, he's telling me about you. He's probably telling you about you.
Or even just how to pray, right? Because God does give insight into certain situations, but how we steward that and what we do with it. I've been around seers that are really unhealthy and they can really see something in a room and it just casts fear. Because they're not seeing it through the lens of Jesus is King. And they're not even seeing it as, hey, this is something that's a tool that can actually help shift somebody's atmosphere. I've been around people that'll be like, well, I saw this and I saw this. And it's not being shared in a healthy context. Mm-hmm. So even when God does give insight that's more difficult, what are we actually doing with it? But in a season where you're not having to discern all of this crazy stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
What has it been like to have dreams at night with the Lord?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned is that I conversate with him a lot more, which is awesome. When I used to have dreams, at first I thought everyone everyone does dream, but I just thought my experience was normal. And then I started sharing some. We were like, nope, I don't dream like that. And I'm like, really? I thought everyone did.
And that's such a classic seer. You don't see that? You don't have dreams all night, every night in Technicolor? I don't understand. And then that can turn into this isolation thing where you're just like, I am special or whatever. Or it can change into, well, I'm just going to tell everybody all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so many ditches in this where you're just how did I just do with this what Jesus told me to do with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
People.
Yeah, so as I was going through dreams, and my dream life has been, I feel like it's the foundation in the sense of my relationship on how me and him talk and conversate. It's one of the primary ways. I love it whenever, I'm trying to get better at 4 a.m. Literally last night I had a dream and I woke up and I was like, I went to the bathroom, I'll write it down. And I did write it down. I do that often. And I'm like, Holy Spirit, if I'm supposed to, remember. So one of the as I'm writing down all my dreams, I'm like, Lord, which one do you want me to share? I think I know why he wants me to share this, but I'm going to share it. But I had this dream, and it was when I was really desiring leadership. I was desiring to be seen. I was desiring the platform and this microphone. And this was back in 2021, I think. I'm desiring all these pretty things that I think is pretty. So I have this dream. And there's this big lemon tree. It's so, like, I still remember it. I was there. And it has this glistening on it. It's bright yellow. It's glittery. It's gold. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. And this a man comes in, walks out of nowhere. And I really feel like he was an angel. But he walks in and he was like, he said, that's not what it seems. And I looked at him. I get so offended whenever people tell me that it's not something and I know it is. And I'm like, yeah, that's a tree, a lemon tree, and it's mine. Like, I'm telling him, and he's like, no, it's not. He said, all that glitters isn't his. So not all that glitters isn't gold. All that glitters isn't his. And he said, but look over there. And it's across this field. And there's little, like, we walk over there, and I'm mad. I'm mad that I have to walk away from this lemon tree. But then all of a sudden, I see an abundance of dinner rolls in this field, and he picks it up. He said, but see, this is the bread of life, and this is his. And in that moment, I wake up from the dream, and I'm like, that's the stupidest dream. What? Like, I'm over it. I'm over this dream. This is stupid. Take me back to the lemons. It all made sense, Mary, once I started walking through my 2022 season.
This whole thing is just lemons right now, and we're going to make lemonade.
Exactly. And when I walked through it, what I had left was the bread of life. Everything that I thought was glittery was not his. I've seen, as social media and things like that, people have platforms, people have followers, people have, and I can even get into a space where I'm like, wow, Lord, that must be awesome. And I'm always reminded, all that glitters isn't his. And so I thought it was good fruit. I thought I was producing good fruit. I really did. I thought, I'm like, man, this is good. I have kind of a leadership thing in this ministry, and it wasn't his, and it was not good fruit.
Yeah. Well, and the tree always bears the fruit. I was talking with a seminary professor, probably 5 years ago, and he was talking about how at the end of your life, the tree bears the fruit. There's a real kindness and a grace of God to let the tree bear the fruit a little bit early so you can see what kind of tree you are.
Yeah. And I guess I'm lemon scent.
Well, you don't have to be, it could be.
No, it was a beautiful dream. So most of the time, one of the things that I've noticed in my dream life with him, it is a lot of, I think it's the common thing, but it's for conversation, it's for relationship, it's out of intimacy. There have been seasons where there are heavier dreams, and it's for intercession. And it's for, I take it very seriously. Whenever he provides information about a geographic area or people or things, I take it very seriously in the sense of intercession and things like that. Yeah, dreams are, I think the healthy heart thing comes in when you start trying to interpret it.
Yeah, I agree too. Well, and what does stewardship of a dream look like for you in your life?
So one thing for me is actually writing it down, and then just really digging in with the Lord. There's been times where like I said, my personality is I'm such an all or nothing person, and I get really excited really quickly. So when I get a dream, especially whenever it's encouragement, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to share it right now. And I've gotten myself into some situations where...
Like pickle, need somebody else to loosen the pickle jar because I'm stuck in the pickle jar. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
Don't know anything about that.
Timing, bro, I was terrible. I'm terrible at timing. Interpretation, revelation, timing, what's that? And so people are about to go into a season where they might be having some stuff might be coming on, but it's not right now that they need to know about it. I'm like, yeah, by the way, the Lord, but he's going to bring you through. And they're like, what?
I didn't want to see that. but you did. So thank you for helping me with that information.
Right. So stewardship for me in my life has been slow down. Slow down. Slow down. That's the best I could do. Slow down. Writing it down, slow down. Also being very aware of what you're going through at that moment, aware of how your soul is, how your heart is. Has somebody offended you lately? Are you ovulating?
Goodness gracious. Even just like thinking about, have I slept regularly? Have I eaten? Have I had water today? Things like that really make a huge difference. And really letting the Lord speak about stuff in a timely manner, because people might not be ready to hear certain things at a certain season. And but too, like, somebody's response, I just want to speak this over you and over anybody listening. People's response is not necessarily your responsibility.
Boom. Yes. I love it. Yes. Thank you, Mary. Even in your podcast, you're teaching and like mentoring and discipling.
Oh, hopefully. Hopefully.
No, I mean, I love whenever we were going to get together and you tell me the topic. It's a great way to show that Jesus is not like bound to religion jargon. I just have to say it. And I think very much so in my life. And what I mean by that is just I've seen Jesus more, like I said, in my mistakes, in my brokenness. And he's just such a kind, like I always say this, and people have told me that I say it a lot, but the Lord is so kind. I've experienced such his kindness in my life. It's an attribute that I'm very familiar with. And I think that was that's not just for me. Like, it's for everyone. So,
Well, Michelle, thank you so much just for coming on, for sharing so authentically and vulnerably with all of us.
yeah.
And just for sharing how God has shown up in your process, and how Jesus has intersected every single point of your life, not just with a knowledge, but a lived experience of him being in your process and with you in your space. And so I'm just honored and grateful that you would take the time to share your story and to share with us and just to pour out the wisdom that you've learned that's been expensive. Yes.
Well, thank you. I was so excited whenever you asked me, and I was like, what? Because you get in this space where you're like, don't nobody want to listen. I talk all the time. Don't nobody want to hear this. And you do kind of get a little nervous because one of the things that I've been told in my church, but even my close friends who have grown up in church and things like that, they're like, I wish I was as honest as you. Like, you just share so honestly. And in my head, I just am like, can't nobody tell it better than me. I'm the one who went through it. Why wouldn't I tell it? I just never got I can't tell this. Like, and also I thought everyone, I'm like, don't everybody go through this? No, Michelle. No, they don't. Don't everyone see like this? Don't everyone drink? So I have a naiveness. I had a naiveness. I'm in front of the church whenever we had testimony night, and I'm thinking I'm going to share about something else. And I go in and I tell them exactly what I told you. And I had so many people come up to me, and I was just sharing. So for Jesus, like, he told me to share it. Believe me, I don't want to, but he's telling me to. And people are like, you to stand in front of a church and tell them. I just didn't get the impact because I'm like, who else is going to tell it? Why wouldn't I share? It's not about me. He gets the full glory. Like, and I think people are looking for authenticity. And I'm not telling to be authentic. I'm telling because it's the truth.
Right. People struggle with the Old Testament stories, but the truth is God was walking alongside imperfect people and writing a bigger story than any of us could ever imagine. I just want to encourage anybody listening, find safe people to get really honest with. safe people takes time to find and to identify, but find safe people that you can really get honest with and share those stories. But honestly, Michelle, your story is so powerful, and I just thank you for sharing it. So if people want to connect with you online or find you, where could they find you?
The basic platforms. No, they can find me on social media. Instagram is Michelle_Calvert87. Facebook is Michelle Calvert. I've tried the TikTok thing. I have one. Just randos be messaging me, and I don't really, not down for that.
TikTok is like its own special place.
I know that. I think I'm showing my age when I'm like, I'm okay with just Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, they can connect with me on social media. One of the things that I just want to make it very clear is that I am available and have capacity to pray with people. Hey, if you have questions, I believe social media can be a really a place where Jesus obviously can show up. But I feel like a lot of times people are like, they're struggling. I just want to make it aware that you can definitely reach out if you need, prayer, or if you just want to have a conversation. I am very non-judge. You can't tell me anything that will make me scrounge up my face. I can tell you that.
Well, I think we all kind of need that. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Bless you. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of Mary for the Ages podcast. I'm Mary. I believe that process leads us into deeper relationship with Jesus. If you are interested in learning more about hearing the voice of God, which is very indispensable for process, this season I am launching a course on hearing the voice of God through the Old Testament prophets. This is a text-based course, and it is designed to not just teach the mechanics of hearing God through the Old Testament prophets, but also to help you understand what some of these fellows went through and how their process was just as powerful as the words that they heard. This is available on maryfortheages.com. That's MARI for the ages, AGES.com, and you can find that there towards the end of the season. You can also join my Substack to know when that will launch on maryfortheages.com.